Hi, I'm Jay Storm. I'm the Chief of Neurosurgery at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I'm joined with my colleagues Rishi Lula from Lurie Children's in Chicago and Adam Resnick, also from CHOP. And we're here to talk about the CBTTC, which is the Children's Brain Tumor Tissue Consortium. This is a consortium that was founded in 2011 and was initially made up of 4 institutions: the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, Lurie Children's in Chicago, and Seattle Children's in Seattle, Washington. And it was meant to combine resources so that we could accelerate discovery in pediatric brain tumors. Pediatric brain tumors are the #1 cause of cancer deaths in children. And despite that, the relative numbers are still quite low. And in order to make advances as quickly as possible, we really need to increase the number of patients. In order to do that, that requires consortia and working together. Now, many consortia have been formed, but one of the unique things about this was it was done in a completely transparent, open access way in which no one has real primacy. All the data is shared almost immediately as it's generated. Everyone can see what everyone else is doing. And the other thing that makes it a powerful both clinical and research endeavor is we have very rich clinical data as well that is annotated very frequently so that you know what therapies they've had, whose original surgery, whose repeat surgery. All this data coming together along with all the genomic data really act to empower researchers and clinicians to make a difference. This was initially founded in 2011. We started adding sites, and it's growing very nicely at this point. And one of the things that we're very excited about is our new executive chair, who's from Chicago, who's actually been kind enough to come to Philadelphia and join us. The one thing that really highlights is this is not one institution who owns this. No one has primacy. This is no more a CHOP initiative than it is a Seattle or a Chicago Children's or anyone else. And to talk a little bit more about that, I would like to turn it over to our new executive chair, Rishi.
Thank you very much, Jay. Thank you for having me here in Philadelphia and giving me the opportunity to work with the Children's Brain Tumor Tissue Consortium. As Jay mentioned, I'm a pediatric neuro-oncologist at Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago and Northwestern University. And I've been involved with the CBTTC as a member of one of the sites for about 2 years. But over the last 6 months or so, I've had an opportunity to get more involved with some of the CBTTC leadership, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to serve as the executive chair of the Children's Brain Tumor Tissue Consortium. My goal as we continue to move the consortium forward is really to build upon the amazing legacy that's been created by those who came before us with regard to leadership of the CBTTC. Specifically, the consortium was created by Dr. Storm as well as Dr. Peter Phillips of neuro-oncology at CHOP. And so our goal is to take what these visionaries put together and help to continue to grow the Children's Brain Tumor Tissue Consortium. To Jay's point, the consortium started in 2011 with 4 original sites. We have since, in this past year, really been able to add several new primary member sites on. That includes the University of California at San Francisco, Stanford University, Cornell University in New York, and the team at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. We're so blessed that the CBTTC also has international representation, as one of the primary members is the Meyer Children's Hospital in Florence, Italy. So together, as the consortium has grown, we're really in a place now that the operations center has continued to grow as well. So under the direct leadership of Dr. Angela Wanders in the Pediatric Neuro-Oncology program at CHOP, the operations center housed here at CHOP really runs the day-to-day operations of the Children's Brain Tumor Tissue Consortium. We're really proud to say that this year we're going to reach a milestone in the CBTTC, and we'll be enrolling our 2,000th patient subject into the CBTTC, and those patients have generously provided us with biospecimens and data together, which allows us to sort of leverage rare tumor samples, put them together, and start to make improvements for children with brain tumors. Once we reach that number, the CBTTC is going to be the largest clinically data annotated open source pediatric brain tumor biobanking initiative in the world. And our goal is going to be to continue to grow that over the next several years. So and to talk a little bit about the scientific endeavors that we're doing, I'd like to pass it over to Dr. Adam Resnick, who's the chair of the scientific committee.
Thank you, Rishi. So thanks everyone for joining us today. As both Rishi and Jay highlighted, this is a pretty transformational year for us because of the level of participation and growth that we've seen in the consortium. It comes at a unique time where the scientific community has come together to recognize that precision medicine is really underpinned by the participation of patients in research in the ways that was just highlighted. To having 2,000 subjects or patients participate together across the United States to support the data enterprise that can finally transform information into clinical into how we actually treat patients is a pretty phenomenal achievement, and as Rishi mentioned, is a unique one in the context of pediatric brain tumors.
So I work at two really big hospitals. So Memorial Sloan Kettering and Weill Cornell Medical Center are enormous in terms of the scope of what we see out there in general. But even within the context of the resources that we have, it was becoming clear to me over the last few years that the ability to handle the data part of what we were acquiring, the so-called big data question, and the collaborative part of it, how do we compare all this data with the other scientists and the other groups that are doing the similar type of research, that type of understanding in my mind that this is getting way too big, way too fast, led me to, find Adam and find out what they were doing. And once I heard about the vision for putting this on an open source platform, a cloud platform that was accessible to all, that would be easily for us to deposit to, and then equally important, easy for us to access for our own science and our own research, it became obvious that trying to compete or be redundant was a ridiculous proposition in the face of what they'd already done in terms of the infrastructure.
Pediatric brain tumors for us have been a mandate in part because very early on we as a team recognized that even though we knew that they were going to be the number one leading cause of disease-related death in children from cancer, there was not enough data to actually support how it is that we're actually going to treat them differentially. We all know that kids get cancer for a very different reason than the way that adults get cancer, and particularly in the context of precision medicine, where we are trying to target a specific mutation or alteration in a patient without doing them harm otherwise. Data is the space we begin with. Part of the reason this is a transformational year is not only because of the number of patients that have been participating in this effort, it's also because we've now been able to shift the biospecimen collection of that information into an architecture or an ecosystem for discovery for the rest of mankind. For us, working within our own domain of interest has always been our own specific goals as physicians and scientists. But we know that there's a large community out there we'd love to engage, to participate, and work together in our efforts. Within our own consortium, we have 14 projects currently using the CBTTC. And as Jay and Rishi mentioned, the idea is for those projects to collaborate between each other, between different institutions, but also with the rest of the world. To do that, as Jay mentioned, the portals that we've created into the CBTTC biorepository and data architectures are open access or open science portals. For us, the goal is to reach out into the community and engage research on behalf of children using and empowering data in the way that accelerates discoveries. Within a month's time or so, one of the largest initiatives coming out of the CBTTC will launch, which is Cavatica. Cavatica is a web-based portal that connects to cloud computing platforms that essentially positions all of the data that we generate in the CBTTC alongside really robust computational resources in a way that allows anybody in the world to compute and analyze and make discoveries in this data. Importantly, and this is one of the most challenging aspects of doing research, the thing that we needed to address was to empower this data in a way that connected to the rest of the world's data. Many efforts from both the NIH and the government and other entities have also been looking at generating data, but it's not until that you intersect such data that new opportunities emerge. And this is something we've routinely seen in many of the projects in the CBTTC, is that when you study your own disease of interest or your own subtype of a brain tumor, you can make headway, but real headway really gets empowered when you connect that data into the rest of the world. So Cavatica, when it launches in about a month's time, will be a cloud-based data and computing environment that's actually connected to all of the NIH and adult data that is out there in the world, making it the largest compute and data platform currently available for pediatric and adult combined research on behalf of the research community. For us, this is our fulfillment of our mandate to the patients who are participating in our efforts. When a patient contributes their biospecimen or signs a consent form to work with the CBTTC, our mandate is to make sure that we transform that relationship into an empowered space to rapidly transform that biospecimen to data for both our researchers, but also for the rest of the world. That effort, I think, will just continue to grow and amass. Essentially, we hope an army of researchers and interested members of the scientific and research community on behalf of the pediatric brain tumor tissue consortiums and the patients that we represent. And this will be a really transformational moment in the age of precision medicine, we think, in the context of what we're doing.
Just like any effort in pediatric cancer, as hopefully many of you watching know, a vast majority of the national funds that are dedicated to cancer research are dedicated to adult cancer research. So less than 5% of all the national funding or NIH funding is dedicated towards pediatric cancers. Pediatric brain tumors represent even a smaller percentage of that. To that end, I think we want to all acknowledge that none of this work could have been done without the generous philanthropic and foundational support that we've had to fund the initiatives within the CBTTC. And the work that we're doing now really is indeed a sort of culmination of lots of investment, not only financial, but time and commitment investments. And our goal is to continue to grow this consortium, and therefore we're going to continue to need support from foundation and foundational representatives. One thing we're launching this year into the next several months is creating the CBTTC Board of Foundations, which is a group of dedicated foundations who are interested in learning about the work that the CBTTC is doing, supporting us, and then really empowering patients and patient foundations to be a part of the Children's Brain Tumor Tissue Consortium. So for any of you that are watching and are interested in participating on the Board of Foundations, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. The best way to do that is to go to the website, which is cbttc.org, and our contact information is there. And we'd love to have the opportunity to work with you to explain the consortium and help find out how you can partner with us to continue to grow it.
Let me echo Rishi's point on this. We all recognize that the initial partnership, right after surgery, that the specimen comes into the consortium, the dedication of the teams that have to do that on the research side, but also the patient's commitment to participating in research. But what Rishi is highlighting is that the foundations that have underpinned support financially for the CBTTC is really the key transformational moment that allowed us to grow exponentially from 100 or so specimens when we first began to more than 6,000 specimens across almost 2,000 subjects now here that are available for research. The other part of the foundational relationship and the patient relationship is one of advocacy. This idea that a patient is a partner in research, both in the cultural space and understanding of how it is that we interact with patients, but also how it is that we engage the mandate to represent and empower the rare, is something that we can't do unless we have direct connectivity and parity with our patient population. We've seen this over and over the last year as, for example, the White House initiated the Precision Medicine Initiative, and Joe Biden initiated the Moonshot Initiative. Across all these national initiatives, what really drives momentum in the recognition and importance of what we're doing is that with foundations and patients themselves. This, in part, is what allows the CBTTC to function in the way that it does, is when we understand and can support both the research community, but also the patient's community capacity to engage and drive visibility and shared understanding of what it is that it takes to do research. In part, that is why we commit to the kind of data sharing and community outreach that we do in the CBTTC. For us, it would never make sense to simply enclose that data for our own research, because we know there are many other people there who can communicate and support that research endeavors better, or even more so than even our community. And so that commitment to data sharing and partnership and collaboration that extends way beyond our own consortium is really the result of our partnership with patients themselves. And we look forward to growing that patient and foundation relationship across the country and more. We have more than, I think, 60 foundations who have already interacted with the CBTTC, and we look to partner with as many more as we can.
So as well-meaning as we all are about sharing, there isn't an infrastructure to do that. There have been attempts through the NCI, through all kinds of strategies to integrate that into a common platform that everybody could have. Grand ideas, but they haven't really translated. I still have no ability to find out the totality of low-grade glioma genomics in any one space, but not only that, there's no way that I could interrogate the database. So one of the most remarkable things I heard this morning, for instance, about the CBTCC was that all of human knowledge of low-grade gliomas in pediatrics is now embedded in that framework. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think the partnership, to again echo it again as well, has been very, very helpful in that these foundations have been able to drive projects and allow us to do things that I think would never have been able to get done if it weren't for the involvement, and that's why this partnership is so crucial, and that we want to make sure that we foster it and develop it as much as possible, because it's a true partnership. It's work with us and working with the foundations, because there's certain things that are very important to you and to us, and it's important to drive those and work together, and that way we can advance this as quickly as possible.
Would you be able to tell us a little bit about the initiative to sort of sequence the entire CBTTC that has become an option for us this year?
Yeah. So what Rishi is mentioning is something that we knew we wanted to engage in. Many of the foundations, and many of you that are probably watching, have supported initial initiatives to really dive deeply into the genomic underpinnings of pediatric brain tumors. We all know that pediatric brain tumors is more than one disease. It's a host of many diseases. And the CBTTC collects all types of brain tumors across every single one of those subtypes. We know that the best way to enter discovery is to dig deep into the genomic cause of those cancers. And until now, there's been a very little amounts of data represented out there in the community to describe different types of brain tumors and how we can potentially target them specifically. So over the past year or so, we've been working to look for commercial and philanthropic partnerships to really empower the deep sequencing of every single one of our brain tumor samples. And it looks like we'll be able to do that by the end of the year. That effort will essentially create the largest whole genome RNA-seq data for pediatric brain tumors available for research for mankind, and will be made available almost in real time to the rest of the community to begin exploring and analyzing. Part of the reason we make that available is because we know that the type of data that we generate is highly complex. We know that there are amazing scientists and clinicians across the world who, when they analyze one piece of data, they find something very different than when we analyze it or another consortium member analyzes it. And that difference doesn't mean one is better than the other. It just means that we actually have to intersect and figure out how it is that those differences actually inform the disease. And so this large amount of data across all of these subjects will be made available for the rest of the community to actually engage. And it'll be the first such data that's actually connected to real biospecimens, so that you can form hypotheses and validate them in those biospecimens. You can do additional studies from that rich genomic data. For us, this has always been the mandate, and something that we thought was going to take us a lot longer. But like everything that has happened, we see an exponential growth in our capacity to really transform that initial biospecimen into really rich data that the community can actually harness. And I think for us, that's one of the more important steps forward we've been able to accomplish over the last couple of years of the biorepository and the CBTTC. That paired with Cavatica and the environment for people to actually use that data, essentially a sandbox where a community can come and play and find and make discoveries in that data in a shared open science environment, is something that we see as a transformational moment for the pediatric cancer community.
So in summary, we just want to say thank you very much for spending some time with us, learning a little bit more about the CBTTC. For those of you that are families and patients, thank you for your generous donations to us with regard to tumor specimens that are precious. We hope to continue to do better using the information that you've so generously provided us. Thank you to the foundations for all of your generous philanthropic support, without which none of this could be done. And for those of you watching from our member sites or from our scientific or clinical communities, thank you for everything that you continue to do to support improving care and outcomes for children with brain and spinal cord tumors. With that, I think we'll end. Thank you very much, and please, if there's any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, the website for the CBTTC is www.cbttc.org.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.